I'm back in Parliament Square, and that rugged statue is of a man called Oliver Cromwell, and it was put here, right outside Parliament, because over the years Cromwell has become known as a symbol of the struggle against the absolute power of kings. Because in the mid-17th century, Cromwell led a parliamentary army in a civil war against the king, Charles I. And Charles was put on trial here in Westminster Hall. And on January the 30th, 1649, he was publicly executed.
Head north from Parliament, up Whitehall, past Downing Street, past the Horse Guards, and you reach Trafalgar Square. And there, nestling at the foot of Nelson's column, sits Charles I, on horseback, covered in pigeon droppings.
It's always struck me as a rather sad statue, this. Not just because it's so weathered, but because of the direction he's forced to look. He's looking back down Whitehall, not towards Parliament, but towards his old palace, the Whitehall Palace, the very place he met his death.
January the 30th, 1649 was a cold day, white with frost. At first floor level, they'd built a scaffold draped with black, guarded by a troop of soldiers.
Charles appeared wearing 2 shirts. Apparently, he didn't want the crowd to think he was shivering from fear. He made a speech denying the people's right to play any part in the process of government. He put his head on the block. It was so low, he was practically flat to the ground. He said his prayers, and then he made a gesture with his hand, and down came the axe. Now, we've had our fair share of kings of England murdered. Edward II was killed with a red-hot poker. Edward V was smothered with a pillow, but this was different. This wasn't the king killed in some back room by some dodgy rival. This was the King of England publicly executed in the name of the English people. And what Parliament did next was they abolished the monarchy completely. They passed a law, no more kings. Why did it happen? What caused this dramatic upheaval in the way that we were governed?
In part, at least, the problem was Charles himself. He believed in what he called his divine right to rule, and parliaments for Charles were an irritation. In his first few years, he called them as rarely as possible, and when they dared interfere in questions of government, he packed them off back to the shires, and for 10 years, he ruled without them.
Anyway, in 1640, Charles was forced to recall Parliament because he was in trouble. He was king, not just here in England, but in Scotland too. And in England and Scotland, he'd provoked anger because he'd been making changes in religion, which is always a dangerous thing to do. And people thought that he was trying to wind back the clock to the days before the Reformation. And in Scotland, the people had raised an army to fight against these changes. And so here in England, Charles was forced to recall Parliament to raise money to fight the Scots.
Parliament met in 1640, bursting to discuss the state of the realm, and they dared criticize not the king directly, but his advisors. Charles hated this kind of interference, and in 1642 he entered Parliament and tried to arrest 5 leading MPs, and of course, uproar. And within weeks, England was split in 2 in a civil war between the king and Parliament.
This is one of many reenactment societies that enjoy playing out the battles of those grim years. And it was in the Civil War years, in the 1640s, that Oliver Cromwell rose to prominence. He was no one special. He was just a farmer. He'd had no military training, but he had an instinctive knack of reading a battle. He formed a troop of cavalry, and he was always in the thick of it, in the uproar and the smoke, and he always won. And it fed in him a sense that God somehow had a purpose for him in all this.
This then was the legacy of the Reformation. A godly revolution that would change England forever.
Traditionally, armies were led by noblemen, but Cromwell thought that some silk-shirted aristocrat was frankly the last person to win a battle, and so he promoted tanners and blacksmiths and farmers and people like himself. And so began, in the Civil War years, a shake-up of the social order that in the years to come, Cromwell would find pretty hard to manage.
By 1646, the First Civil War was won, and Charles was imprisoned here in Carisbrooke Castle.
What followed were months of stalemate. Parliament still wanted Charles on the throne, but under their control. Charles still believed in his divine right to rule, and he dismissed all those who'd fought against him as traitors. But then, he sealed his own fate. He did a secret deal with the Scots.
Charles persuaded the Scots to invade England to reclaim his throne, plunging England into 2 more years of suffering. Cromwell never forgave Charles. As he saw it, Charles had declared war on his own people. He was now Charles Stuart, that man of blood. And in late January 1649, Charles was tried and executed for treason.
But I want to end this story with a little detail that was recorded by an eyewitness who was there on the day that Charles was killed. And he says that when the axe fell, there was an audible groan from the crowd. No cheers, no celebrations, which begs the question, how much did the people of England really want the king dead? And it begs the question, what would happen next?